I grew up on the east side of Columbus, Ohio, in a neighborhood where kids spent their summers playing ball in cracked parking lots and winters shoveling each other's driveways for a few extra dollars. My life wasn't remarkable, and neither was I. My dad left when I was 13, and my mom worked long shifts at a nursing home to keep us afloat. She was the kind of woman who never took a day off, not even when she was sick. I used to admire her resilience, but it also weighed on me, made me feel guilty every time I stumbled. After high school, college was supposed to be my escape. I enrolled in community college with shaky optimism, convinced that if I just kept my head down, I'd make it. But 2 semesters in, I crashed hard. I failed classes I barely attended, dropped essays halfway through, and spent too much time wandering campus like a ghost. When the letter came telling me I was on academic suspension, I hid it from my mom for a week. She found it anyway. "Maybe this is just a break," she told me, setting the letter down on the kitchen counter. "Maybe you'll try again when you're ready." But I wasn't thinking about trying again. I was thinking about how to pay rent for the basement apartment I shared with a buddy, and how to stop feeling like a burden. That's when Ethan stepped back into my life. Ethan and I had been friends since grade school. He was the kind of kid who could charm teachers out of detention and convince you to sneak into movies you didn't even want to see. My mom used to say, "Ethan's a smooth talker. Don't follow him off a cliff." I should have listened. We'd lost touch after high school, but in the spring of 2016, he showed up at my door with that same easy grin like no time had passed. "Heard you're looking for work," he said. "My uncle's got this construction company. It's tough, but it pays." I didn't hesitate. Within a week, I was hauling steel beams and mixing cement. The work was brutal, sun beating down on our backs, hands blistered from shovels, but the money was steady. Ethan and I carpooled every day, blasting music on the freeway, talking about nothing. It felt good to have someone familiar beside me again. But there was always this edge with Ethan. He had a way of nudging you into things you weren't sure about. If you resisted, he'd act offended or call you boring until you gave in. That summer, after we pulled 72 straight hours on a bridge project, he leaned back in the truck and said, "We deserve to celebrate like kings tonight." I wanted to crash into my mattress, but he wouldn't let up. "Come on, man. One night. You'll thank me." I should have said no, but with Ethan, no never really felt like an option. The bar he dragged me to was one of those downtown spots you wouldn't find unless someone showed you. Neon signs blinked above sticky floors, the air heavy with sweat, beer, and the tang of cheap cologne. I nursed a whiskey I couldn't afford while Ethan slapped backs and laughed too loud, making his rounds like he owned the place. That's when he introduced me to Rachel. She was stunning in a way that made you second-guess yourself. Dark hair spilling over her shoulders, eyes that seemed to linger just a second too long. Ethan leaned in, grinning. "This is Rachel, a friend of a friend. Thought you two might hit it off." Her handshake was warm, her smile even warmer. She laughed at my stupid stories, leaned in close when the music got louder, and at one point whispered, "You should be careful. My ex gets jealous when he sees me talk to new guys." I laughed it off, but her eyes darted around the room, scanning faces like she meant it. I told myself she was just teasing, that this was part of her charm. By midnight, Ethan had vanished with some of his coworkers, leaving Rachel and me pressed into a corner booth. She suggested grabbing food, but when I mentioned the diner near my apartment, she insisted we head back to my place instead. "Too crowded out here," she said, something in my gut twisted. I wasn't the type to bring strangers home, but she seemed so insistent, so comfortable. I convinced myself I was overthinking it. We walked the short stretch back to my apartment on Summit Street. The night air was thick, the kind that clings to your skin. Inside, Rachel kicked off her heels like she'd been there 100 times. She drifted to the couch, scrolling through her phone while I rummaged for snacks. It felt rushed, unnatural, but her presence pulled me in like a tide. I told myself I was lucky. I told myself this was the night Ethan promised, celebrating like kings. I didn't realize the crown came with a noose. Around 2 in the morning, the banging started. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the kind of pounding that rattles walls and makes your blood run cold. Rachel's face drained of color. She whispered, "That's my ex. He must have followed us." Before I could move, the door swung open. Two men stormed in, one gripping a metal pipe, the other with a pistol half tucked into his waistband. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Who the hell are you?" the one with the pipe barked. "Think you can steal my girl?" I stammered. "I didn't, she—" The pistol guy shoved me against the wall, hard enough to knock the wind out of me. They tore through my drawers, kicking over a chair, demanding money. I had $80 in my wallet. That was it. "Cheap night, huh?" the man with the gun sneered. The pipe pressed against my neck, cold and unyielding. My hands shook as I held out the bills. I waited for Rachel to scream, to beg them to stop, to do anything. But she stood in the corner, arms crossed, silent. Her eyes never met mine. When it was over, they left with my cash and whatever loose change they found. The door slammed, footsteps echoing down the hall. I turned to Rachel. The couch was empty. She was gone. No words, no goodbye. Just gone. I sat there for hours, heart pounding, staring at the broken pieces of my apartment. The silence was deafening. The next morning I called Ethan. He answered with a groggy laugh. "Dude, what happened last night? You bail early?" I told him everything. The men, the robbery, Rachel's silence. He chuckled like I was exaggerating. "Bro, maybe you drank too much. You probably just got jumped. Happens downtown all the time." "No," I snapped. "She knew them. She didn't even try to stop them." He paused, then brushed it off. "Man, you gotta stop being so paranoid." But I couldn't shake the feeling. A week later, I went back to the bar, hoping for answers. I asked the bartender if he'd seen Rachel around. He frowned. "Rachel? Who's that? I've never seen her here." I described her, described the two guys. He shook his head. "Not ringing a bell. Sorry." That's when the pieces clicked. Ethan had been the one to push me out that night, to introduce me to Rachel, to disappear at just the right time. The whole thing felt staged, like I'd been set up for a con I didn't even know I was part of. I confronted him once more. "Were you in on it?" He rolled his eyes. "You're losing it, man. You think I'd do that to you? We've been friends since we were kids." But his grin didn't reach his eyes. And I realized I didn't know Ethan anymore, not the way I thought I did. Maybe I never had. I quit the construction job 2 days later, told Ethan I was done. He shrugged like it didn't matter, like I was just another name he could replace on the crew. For weeks I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's face in the corner, cold and detached. I heard the metal pipe scraping my neck, the laughter of the man with the gun. I kept asking myself, was Ethan behind it or was it just a cruel coincidence I'll never know? What I do know is this. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the person who knows your weaknesses best, who knows how to push you where you don't want to go. I had trusted Ethan with my safety, and he may have sold me out for a quick payday or a cheap thrill. I cut him out of my life completely. Blocked his number, moved apartments, started over. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Now, when I walk into a bar and someone smiles too easily, leans in too close, I hear Rachel's whisper in my head. "Be careful, my ex is watching." And I listen. Because the lesson I learned is one that sticks with me every single day. Sometimes the real danger isn't a stranger in the dark. Sometimes it's the friend standing right beside you. Never ignore your instincts and never give blind trust to those who've already shown you they thrive on control. A friend who pushes you into danger isn't a friend at all. They're a threat wearing a familiar face. When I first moved to Chicago in 2018, I thought I'd finally found the version of myself I'd always been chasing. Back in my hometown in Indiana, I was the quiet kid, the one who stayed home on Friday nights while everyone else hit bonfires or football games. I liked books more than crowds, and that never changed. Graduate school in Chicago gave me purpose. I was knee-deep in American literature and tutoring freshman students at the university. On top of that, I worked part-time at a bookstore that smelled like paper dust and brewed coffee, a place where silence was an asset. I wasn't a party person, not then, not ever. But Tyler, he was my contradiction. We'd met during my undergrad years, assigned as lab partners in a general ed science class neither of us cared about. He was talkative, full of charm, the kind of guy who made strangers laugh within seconds. Where I leaned toward caution, he leaned toward chaos. He never accepted a no without needling you until you gave in. "Come on, man," he'd say. "Life's too short to be boring." By the fall of 2019, I was buried under graduate seminars and late bookstore shifts. I wanted quiet nights, coffee, and early sleep. Tyler wanted the opposite. That October, he called me 3 times in 1 week about a rooftop birthday party for a coworker of his named Melissa. "Come on," he teased over the phone. "You seriously gonna sit around grading essays while half the city's watching fireworks from a rooftop?" "I've got class in the morning," I muttered. "Bro, it's a Friday. No one cares. Free drinks, skyline views. Melissa's turning 21. It's gonna be legendary." That was Tyler's trick. He made you feel like you were missing history itself if you stayed home. And I was tired. Tired of being the guy who always said no. Tired of feeling like the world was spinning without me. Against my better judgment, I told him I'd go. The warehouse on West Fulton Street looked like it hadn't hosted life in years. Cracked windows, rusted loading docks, graffiti peeling off brick walls. The kind of place you'd cross the street to avoid after dark. "This is it?" I asked, staring at the hulking structure. Tyler grinned, adjusting his jacket against the biting wind. "Trust me, man. It's cooler inside." The main elevator was broken, so everyone was using a freight elevator that looked like it had survived 2 world wars. It rattled and groaned as we rose, metal screeching with every floor we passed. I pressed my hand against the wall, half joking, half serious. "If this thing drops, you're covering my funeral." Tyler just laughed. "Adds to the adventure, right?" When the gate screeched open at the 23rd floor, we stepped into silence. Balloons still floated, streamers hung crooked, and a banner screamed, "Happy 21, Melissa," in gold letters. But the tables were abandoned, plates of half-eaten cake sat untouched, and someone's phone buzzed endlessly under a chair. A cold wave crept down my spine. "Where is everyone?" I asked. Tyler shrugged, grabbing a half-full cup from a table like it was no big deal. "Probably inside. Chill, man." But something was wrong, and deep down, I already knew it. The rooftop stretched out beneath the skyline, Chicago glittering like broken glass under the October sky. The wind whipped my jacket open and I shivered as I scanned the space. Decorations fluttered, half-blown candles flickered in the dark, but the place felt abandoned. A party that had ended in a hurry. Then I noticed them. 3 pairs of shoes lined neatly along the edge of the roof. They looked almost deliberate, placed side by side, not tossed or forgotten. Next to them were faint scuff marks, the kind you'd see if someone had been dragged. My stomach turned. I bent down, running my fingers over the concrete. "Tyler, what the hell is this?" He barely glanced over. "Dude, you're overthinking again. People get drunk, do dumb stuff. Relax." But then I saw him. Behind one of the HVAC units, a young man slumped against the wall, blood soaking his shirt. His throat was a torn mess, and his fingers tapped the ground in shaky rhythm. It took me a second to recognize it. ... SOS. My chest tightened. I dropped beside him. "Hey, stay with me, what happened?" His lips trembled, voice broken. She pushed them all." The words barely left his mouth before his head sagged, eyes rolling back. I stumbled to my feet, heart hammering. "Tyler, we need help now." But before I could move, the heavy rooftop door slammed shut. The metallic clang echoed across the roof. I ran to it, yanking at the handle, but it was chained from the outside. The realization hit like ice water. We were trapped. I turned to Tyler, panic rising, but his face didn't mirror mine. He wasn't shocked, wasn't horrified. He smirked just slightly and muttered under his breath, "Guess it's starting." My whole body went cold. "What do you mean, starting?" That's when Melissa appeared. She stepped out from the shadows near the stairwell, her dress torn, makeup smeared across her face. In her hand was a hammer streaked with blood. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her voice was steady, sharp. "They laughed at me for years," she said. "Treated me like trash. Tonight they finally understood what it feels like." The hammer gleamed under the rooftop lights. I couldn't move. The pieces clicked together. Melissa's birthday, the abandoned rooftop, the lined-up shoes, the injured man. This wasn't a party. It was a massacre. I turned to Tyler, desperate. "You knew about this?" He didn't answer. His silence was worse than words. Melissa pointed the hammer at me. "Don't worry, you're not on my list. Tyler brought you as a witness. He thought you should see what real payback looks like." My knees locked. "Witness? Tyler, what the hell is she talking about?" Melissa's eyes darted toward the bleeding man, who was still twitching on the ground. She raised the hammer and brought it down with a sickening crack. His body stilled. I screamed, lurching forward, but Tyler grabbed my arm. "Don't," he hissed. I jerked away, staring at him in disbelief. "You brought me here to watch this? Are you insane?" His lips pressed tight. No explanation, no remorse. Melissa stepped closer, the hammer dripping. "You see now? This city chews people up, spits them out, laughs in their faces. I'm just giving them a taste of their own medicine." Her words echoed in my head, mingling with the whistle of the wind. It didn't matter if I believed her, if I pitied her. She was dangerous, and Tyler, my friend, had dragged me straight into her revenge. Sirens wailed below, faint but growing louder. Someone had called the cops. Maybe a neighbor had heard screams. Maybe one of Melissa's victims had gotten a message out. Melissa tilted her head, almost smiling. Too late for them. She moved toward me, hammer raised. I stumbled backward, grabbing the first thing I could find, a broken chair leg lying near the table. My hand shook as I raised it like a weapon. "Stay back," she laughed bitterly. "You're not on my list. But if you get in the way, you'll join them." I swung when she lunged, wood cracking against her arm. The hammer clattered to the ground. I dove for it, but she slammed into me, nails clawing my neck. We crashed against the concrete, her breath hot against my face. "Tyler!" I screamed. "Help me!" But he just stood there, frozen, eyes wide, hands limp at his sides. He wasn't my friend anymore. He was a spectator. The rooftop door burst open with a deafening crash. Police officers stormed in, guns drawn. They yanked Melissa off me as she shrieked Tyler's name over and over, spitting blood and curses. "Tyler!" she howled as they dragged her away. "You promised. You said you'd stay." I collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. Tyler backed away, pale, trembling. He looked like a boy caught stealing candy, not a man who had led me into a massacre. In the aftermath, the story spread fast. Melissa had planned it for weeks, drugging drinks, luring her old tormentors to the rooftop, chaining the exits so no one could run. The cops found her notebook later, pages filled with names, reasons, grievances, a kill list dressed up as a birthday party guest list. But the detail that haunted me most wasn't her rage. It was Tyler's silence. He had known. He had dragged me there as if it were some twisted game. He never admitted it outright, but I saw it in his eyes. He wanted me to witness something unforgettable, to share in the chaos, maybe even to validate his own sick fascination. We never spoke again. I blocked his number, dropped the bookstore job, and moved out of Chicago within months. But some nights when the wind rattles my windows, I see those 3 pairs of shoes lined up along the edge. I hear the pounding of the rooftop door. I feel Tyler's silence like a blade between my ribs. Trust is fragile. It can be shattered without a word, without even an action. Sometimes it's shattered by what someone doesn't do. The lesson I carry is simple but permanent. Betrayal doesn't always come in the form of enemies. Sometimes, it's your friend standing beside you, smiling while you're pushed toward the edge. Never ignore the quiet unease in your gut. A true friend protects you from danger. A false one walks you straight into it. High school has a way of magnifying who you are. If you're confident, it turns you into a star. If you're awkward, it traps you in shadows. Back in 2012, when I was 17 and a junior at Ridgefield High in Connecticut, I lived almost entirely in those shadows. I wasn't a loner exactly, but I wasn't the kind of kid anyone remembered once the bell rang. My world was small, my little brother at home, the video games we played together, and the comfort of Friday nights spent watching movies instead of pretending I fit in at somebody's crowded house party. Logan was different. He was loud in a way that made people listen, tall, with messy blonde hair, and a grin that made teachers forgive him for being late. He and I had been friends since middle school, back when we bonded over skateboards and comic books. But by junior year, Logan was slipping into a new orbit, one filled with parties, beer, and kids who barely knew my name. He never let me drift too far, though. He'd toss an arm around my shoulders in the cafeteria and say, "Don't go hermit on me, man. You gotta live a little." That's exactly what he said the night he convinced me to go to his cousin's party. It was early October, the kind of cool evening where the leaves crunch under your sneakers and your breath clouds the air. Logan and I walked up the long driveway of a 2-story colonial on the edge of town. The windows glowed gold, laughter spilling into the night. I hesitated at the door, my chest tight. "One night won't kill you," Logan said, flashing me a grin. I forced a smile. "Easy for you to say." The second we stepped inside, chaos swallowed me. Music pounded so loud it shook my ribs. Kids crowded every room, red cups in hand, voices raised in drunken celebration. I followed Logan like a shadow, sticking close as he dragged me from group to group. He thrived in it, feeding off the energy while I kept nodding awkwardly, trying not to trip over my own feet. For a while, it almost felt okay. Logan never let me get too lost, circling back every few minutes with a joke or a drink I pretended to sip. But by midnight, the house started to empty. Parents' curfews, hangovers setting in. The living room thinned until only a handful of us were left, cleaning up bottles and sweeping pizza crusts off the floor. The music was lower, voices softer, and for the first time that night, I let myself relax. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. It started with the sound of the front door slamming open. A gust of cold night air swept through the hallway, and before anyone could react, a woman stumbled into the living room. She looked like she'd been fighting ghosts, hair tangled, mascara running, her clothes wrinkled and dirty. She was maybe late 30s, though the glassy rage in her eyes made her look older. "This is my house too," she screamed, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You think you can lock me out?" Everyone froze. Logan's cousin, a skinny kid with braces and nervous eyes, muttered under his breath, "That's my dad's ex-wife. She's not supposed to be here." Before anyone could move, the woman grabbed a lamp and hurled it against the wall. The bulb exploded in a spray of glass, light dying instantly. She kicked the TV stand, sending the screen crashing to the floor. "You don't get to erase me!" she shrieked. Panic broke. People bolted for the back door, shoving each other down the hallway. I stumbled after them, my pulse thundering in my ears. But Logan's hand gripped my arm, dragging me toward the bathroom at the end of the hall. "Go," he ordered, shoving me inside. "Lock yourself in. I'll handle this." My hands fumbled with the lock as I slammed the door shut. My chest heaved as shouts echoed outside, glass breaking, people crying, someone begging for help. I pressed my back against the door, knees trembling. Then I heard it. Logan's voice. Calm. Too calm. "You shouldn't be here," he said, low but clear. "But since you are, Maybe we can make a deal. My skin crawled. A deal? With her? The woman's bitter laugh sliced through the air. Logan's voice followed, sharp and steady. Look, he's in the bathroom. You wanted to scare someone, right? He's weak. Easy target. I froze. The words sank in like poison. He was talking about me. My whole body went numb. I pressed my ear to the door, desperate to believe I'd misheard. Maybe I'd twisted his words, maybe he was trying to calm her down. But then came the footsteps, heavy, uneven, thudding closer with each step. The bathroom door rattled. A woman's voice sang through the crack. Open up. Your friend said you were in here. My hands clamped over my mouth to hold back a sob. Please, I whispered. Please, no. The handle jerked violently. She slammed her fist against the wood, the sound echoing in my chest. Open the door. I pressed my weight against it, my back digging into the knob. My heart felt like it would burst out of my ribs. I could hear Logan's voice somewhere behind her, low and indistinct. But he wasn't stopping her. He wasn't defending me. He was feeding her. The chaos outside grew louder, sirens wailing in the distance, the stomp of boots against the porch. The woman cursed and pounded once more before footsteps retreated down the hall. Shouting followed, then the muffled sounds of a struggle. I stayed frozen, breath ragged, until a sharp knock hit the bathroom door. A man's voice. Police. You can come out now, it's safe. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body had turned to stone and all I could hear was Logan's voice on repeat. He's weak, easy target. When I finally stepped out, the living room looked like a war zone. The TV lay shattered on the floor, chairs overturned, broken glass glinting in the carpet. 2 officers had the woman pinned against the wall, handcuffing her as she cursed and kicked. Logan stood near the couch, his face pale but unreadable, arms crossed like he was watching a movie. You okay, kid? One of the officers asked me. I nodded shakily, though nothing felt okay. My eyes darted to Logan, waiting for some explanation, some apology. But he only shrugged, like we'd both just been unlucky bystanders. Later, outside, when the police cars pulled away, I cornered him by the driveway. What the hell was that? My voice cracked. You told her I was in the bathroom. You gave me up. Logan's face twisted into a smirk. I was just trying to calm her down. You're being dramatic. Dramatic, I spat. She was going to come after me because of you. He rolled his eyes. And she didn't. You're fine. Don't make this bigger than it was. I stared at him, searching for guilt, for shame, for any crack in his mask. There was nothing. Just that casual dismissal, as if my fear was an exaggeration, as if my life hadn't been hanging on the turn of a lock. That was the moment something broke. I never went to another party after that. I never answered another one of Logan's calls. He tried a few times in the weeks that followed, sending texts with jokes, acting like nothing had happened. But I couldn't unhear his voice, calm and casual, offering me up like a bargaining chip. At school, he carried on as usual, his grin still winning over teachers and friends. But whenever he spotted me in the hallway, his smile faltered, just for a second. Maybe he knew I'd never look at him the same. Maybe he didn't care. Years later, when I think back to that night, it's not the woman's screams or the shattering glass that haunt me. It's the silence between Logan and me in that driveway, when I realized he wasn't my friend at all. A locked bathroom saved my life, but it also showed me the truth. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers storming through the door. Sometimes it comes from the person who walked in with you. A true friend protects you when fear closes in. A false one sacrifices you to save themselves. Trust should never be given blindly, especially to those who treat loyalty like it's disposable. When I think back on college, most of my memories come tinted with a warm glow. Late nights at diners, study sessions that turned into laughter fits, road trips on barely any gas money. But every glow has its shadows, And for me, the darkest one falls on a cabin in the Smoky Mountains in August 2018. We were heading into our senior year, and the trip was supposed to be a send-off for Amber, who was getting married in the fall. She was the responsible one, the type who carried Band-Aids in her purse and remembered everyone's birthdays. This was her chance to let loose before tying the knot. The cabin perched high on a ridge, surrounded by pines that whispered in the wind. The gravel road that led up to it twisted like a snake, so narrow you held your breath when another car passed. When we reached the top, it felt like we had left the world behind. No streetlights, no neighbors, just us and the wilderness pressing in from every side. I'd been friends with Olivia since middle school. We were opposites, me cautious, her bold to the point of reckless. She had this way of turning everything into a competition, like life itself was a scoreboard she had to dominate. It could be annoying, but it also made her magnetic. People wanted to be around her, even when her edges cut too close. That night after dinner, as twilight folded the mountains in blue shadow, someone suggested a drinking game. I don't remember who. It didn't matter. What mattered was the way Olivia's eyes lit up. "Finally, something worth doing," she said, practically bouncing in her seat. We circled around the living room, bottles lined up on the coffee table. At first it felt lighthearted, shots chased with soda, laughter echoing off the log walls, music buzzing from someone's Bluetooth speaker. But even then, I could sense the shift. Olivia wasn't drinking to have fun, she was drinking to win. The rules didn't stay simple for long. Every round, Olivia pushed harder. "2 shots this time," she said, grinning, her voice already tinged with that familiar edge. When someone hesitated, she leaned in, her tone sharp. "Come on, don't be weak. What's the point of playing if you're gonna quit halfway?" People laughed nervously, clinking cups to keep the mood alive. But I saw the way Amber's smile faltered, the way her hands twisted in her lap. I leaned close and whispered, "She's gonna make herself sick. We should stop this." Olivia heard me. Of course she did. She had a sixth sense for challenges. Her eyes narrowed, and before I could explain, she shoved Amber lightly but with a sting. "You think you're better than me?" she snapped. "You think I can't handle it?" The room fell quiet. The music kept playing, tinny against the silence, but the easy vibe was gone. Every laugh felt forced. Every cheer was tinged with unease. Olivia wasn't playing anymore. She was proving something, though none of us knew exactly what. She downed another shot, then another. Her cheeks flushed, her words slipping, but her eyes fixed like daggers. We begged her to stop. "Olivia, enough. You're going too far," I said, my voice firm for once. She sneered. "If none of you can keep up, maybe I need new friends." Amber looked like she wanted to disappear. The rest of us sat frozen, unsure whether to push back or let her burn herself out. And in that hesitation, we all failed her. It happened fast, like a candle burning down to the stub and snuffing itself out. One moment, Olivia was raising her glass again, her hand shaking as she shouted for another round. The next, she collapsed onto the rug, her body convulsing. Panic tore through us. Amber screamed her name, shaking her shoulders while someone fumbled with a phone trying to call 911. Service was terrible. Bars flickered in and out, each failed attempt heavier than the last. My own hands shook so badly I could barely type in the cabin's address. Come on," I muttered, staring at the screen like sheer willpower could force a connection. When a dispatcher finally answered, the words tumbled out of me in a rush. "Our friend, she's not breathing right. She's having seizures. We need help now." The dispatcher's calm voice felt surreal against the chaos in the room. She guided us through chest compressions, told us to keep her on her side, but Olivia's face was turning gray, her breaths shallow and ragged. While I pressed against her chest, counting out compressions with my trembling hands, I glanced around the room. Every face was pale, eyes wide, guilt etched into their features. None of us had stopped her. None of us had been brave enough. And then Amber broke. Through tears, she whispered. She made me bring the extra bottles. She said if I didn't, she'd tell everyone about my abortion last year. The words hung heavy in the air, heavier than the sound of Olivia's gasping. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just about drinking. Olivia had manipulated us, weaponized secrets, and dragged us into her self-destruction. The paramedics arrived what felt like hours later, boots pounding up the cabin stairs, equipment clattering as they rushed to her side. We scrambled back, giving them space, our bodies pressed against the log walls. I watched them work. Oxygen mask, IV lines, urgent commands. Their precision made our panic look pitiful. "Pulse is weak," one of them muttered. "We're losing her." They carried her out on a stretcher, the oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. Amber sobbed uncontrollably, clinging to my arm as if I could anchor her. The rest of us stood in stunned silence, the weight of our complicity crushing us. We followed the ambulance down the winding gravel road in a caravan of headlights, every turn feeling like it might be the last time we'd see her alive. At the hospital, we sat in the waiting room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, our clothes still reeking of alcohol. Hours dragged by until a doctor finally emerged, his face drawn. "I'm sorry," he said. "She didn't make it." Amber collapsed into tears. I sat frozen, my mind replaying her words. She told me if I didn't, she'd tell everyone my secret. I wanted to be angry at Olivia, but all I felt was hollow. We had all played along. We had laughed, we had cheered, we had given her the stage she demanded. And when it mattered, none of us had taken it away. The weeks after blurred together. Funeral arrangements, whispered rumors on campus, the quiet way people avoided saying Olivia's name. I avoided mirrors because I couldn't stand the reflection of someone who had stood by while a friend spiraled into oblivion. But grief has a way of forcing truth into the open. I saw Amber one afternoon on the quad, sitting alone, her face pale. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "She wasn't my friend," she said flatly. "She just knew how to hurt people until they gave her what she wanted." Her words hit harder than the funeral sermon. Olivia hadn't been a friend in years. She had been a tyrant in disguise, someone we all enabled because it was easier than standing up to her. Now, every time I see a shot glass, every time someone pushes me to drink more than I want, I hear her voice. "Don't be weak." But instead of fear, I feel resolve. Weakness isn't saying no. Weakness is letting someone else dictate your choices. The cabin in the Smokies was supposed to be a celebration of friendship. Instead, it became a cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes the people we call friends are the ones who drag us closest to the edge. True friendship isn't about keeping up or giving in. It's about protecting each other, even when it's uncomfortable. Standing up to someone isn't betrayal. It's the deepest form of loyalty. When I packed up my life and moved to Portland in March of 2021, I thought I was starting fresh. New city, new job, new version of myself. I had just turned 26, still carrying the weight of failed relationships and a family that lived 3 states away. Portland seemed like the kind of place where people reinvented themselves, and I was ready to try. The marketing job wasn't glamorous. Long hours staring at campaign reports, too many Zoom calls, and a boss who thought every idea had to be bigger, flashier, bolder. I kept my head down, grateful just to be employed. Still, those first weeks were lonely. I didn't know anyone outside the office, and after work, I went home to my 1-bedroom apartment where the silence wrapped around me like a heavy coat. That's when Natalie appeared. She was the quiet one in the office, the person people forgot was there until she spoke up in meetings with some small, thoughtful comment. At first, she seemed harmless. She'd linger by my desk during lunch asking about my weekend, my family, the little things no one else cared to notice. I welcomed it. Her listening made me feel less like a stranger in a city full of strangers. Our first coffee outing felt natural. She listened while I vented about deadlines, nodded when I admitted how much I missed home. "I know the feeling," she said softly. "It's hard being new." That empathy drew me in, but what began as comfort slowly grew heavier. She started showing up in places I hadn't invited her, waiting outside the grocery store, walking into the same yoga class I'd signed up for, coincidentally browsing in the bookstore I loved on weekends. At first I laughed it off. "Do you have a tracker on me or something?" I teased. She just smiled. "Maybe I just know where you'll be." I told myself it was a joke, but the words lodged in the back of my mind, waiting for the moment they'd feel like a warning. It was the little things that changed first. A new jacket I bought one week would show up on her the next. I wore a particular shade of lipstick to work, and the following day she arrived with the exact same color. My coworkers noticed, jokingly calling her my shadow. At first I laughed with them. Shadows vanish when the light changes, right? But Natalie didn't vanish. She only grew bolder. One Friday night, after a brutal week of campaign deadlines, I invited her over to my apartment. I thought maybe if I drew the boundary myself, inviting her into my space on my terms, I could take control of the friendship again. We ordered takeout, picked a movie, and for a while, it almost felt normal. Then I walked into my bedroom. Natalie was sitting at my vanity, holding one of my necklaces in her hand, studying herself in the mirror. She froze when she saw me caught in the act, but then she giggled nervously. "Sorry," she said, slipping the necklace back. "I just wanted to see what it felt like to be you for a second." Her words didn't sound like a joke. They lingered in the air long after she left that night. To be me. From then on, I noticed things going missing. A bracelet, my favorite college hoodie, a journal. They'd vanish for weeks, only to reappear later in the exact same place but slightly wrong, folded differently, or a page bent back that I hadn't touched. I started locking my door, double-checking windows. My building showed no signs of break-ins, but in my gut, I knew. The only person who had ever been inside often enough to know where things were was Natalie. By late May, the situation had escalated. She lingered longer at my desk at work, asked personal questions I didn't want to answer, and pushed for details I tried to keep private. One evening, after a happy hour with colleagues, she insisted on walking me home. It was only a few blocks, and I tried to brush her off, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. When we reached my apartment door, she lingered. "Can I stay over? Just for tonight?" she asked. I hesitated. "Why? What's going on?" Her smile sent chills down my spine. "I just sleep better near you. Don't you feel like we're the same person sometimes?" I forced a laugh, masking my unease. "Not really. I think you should head home, Natalie." I shut the door before she could argue, my pulse racing. That night, as I drifted toward sleep, a sound snapped me awake. A faint creak. My bedroom door, already closed, was inching open. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. In the dark hallway stood a figure. Still, watching. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Natalie." The figure didn't move. Panic surged through me. I scrambled for my phone and dialed 911, my hands trembling. By the time police arrived, the figure was gone. The balcony door was unlocked from the inside. My neighbor swore later she had seen Natalie standing outside my window that evening, just watching. That was the night I realized this wasn't about coincidence anymore. It was obsession. I bought a cheap security camera the next day just to calm my nerves. But what it captured only confirmed my fears. The footage showed Natalie entering my apartment with a copy of my keys. I watched in horror as she wandered through my rooms, touching my things, flipping through my books, sitting at my desk like she lived there. The most chilling clip showed her lying on my bed, her eyes closed, her head resting on my pillow. When I confronted her at work, my voice shook. "You've been in my apartment. You stole my things. You need to stay away from me." She didn't deny it. She just tilted her head, her expression oddly serene. "You make such a perfect life," she said softly. "I only wanted to borrow it for a while." Borrow it. Like my life was something she could check out of a library. HR got involved, but the company's response was tepid. Restraining orders were complicated, and Natalie insisted it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't feel safe waiting for the system to catch up. I broke my lease that week and moved in with 2 co-workers until I could find another place. Cutting her off wasn't as clean as I wanted it to be. I still felt her presence everywhere, passing reflections in windows, footsteps behind me on quiet streets, the nagging fear that my phone or email had been hacked. Even after I changed locks and numbers, I couldn't shake the paranoia. It's been years since I left that apartment, but the experience carved itself into me. I still live in Portland, but I don't tell new acquaintances where. I've become private, cautious. People call it guardedness. I call it survival. Every so often, I'll catch my reflection in a store window or a bathroom mirror, and for a split second, I expect to see her standing behind me, wearing the same clothes, the same jewelry, the same smile. The truth is, Natalie never really left. Not in my mind. She became the shadow I can't shake, the reminder of how quickly a friendship can turn into something darker, something invasive. I've learned that loneliness can make you accept company without questioning intentions. But closeness without boundaries isn't friendship, it's control. And when someone tells you they just want to be you, believe them. Then run. Not every friendship is safe. True friends respect your boundaries and identity, while unhealthy ones try to erase them. Guard your space, your privacy, and your sense of self, because once someone tries to take them, it's far harder to reclaim them. Spring of 2020 should have been about fresh starts, but instead, I found myself sitting alone in my 1-bedroom apartment in Raleigh, North Carolina, staring at walls that felt closer every day. The pandemic had shut everything down: coffee shops, gyms, even the bookstore where I used to wander for hours just to feel surrounded by life. At 26, fresh from a draining breakup that left me raw and restless, the silence of quarantine became unbearable. My friends noticed the spiral. They teased me over FaceTime, their voices playful but edged with concern. "Jenna, you're too picky. You've got to at least try meeting people again. Zab is safe, it's not like those sketchy sites. Verified photos, location filters, just give it a shot." I hated the idea of online dating, swiping left and right like picking produce at the store. But loneliness is persuasive. It wears you down in small ways until you give in. That's when I met Carrara. Her profile stood out for what it didn't try to be. No bikini shots on the beach, no glam selfies in bathroom mirrors, just simple snapshots. Reading in a cafe, hiking near a waterfall, cross-legged on her living room floor with a mug in hand. Her bio was only 3 words long: quiet, loyal, real. I matched with her after 2 days of half-hearted swiping. I expected nothing. But when she messaged first, her words weren't the usual small talk. She asked about my work, about my favorite books, about what I missed most before the world shut down. She remembered the details I shared, circling back to them days later like she'd been holding on to every piece of me. At night, our conversation stretched until my phone battery nearly died. She spoke softly, almost shy, and when she laughed, it was this low, hesitant sound, like she wasn't used to letting it out. More than once, she told me, "I don't have many close friends. When I find someone I click with, I don't let go." Looking back, that line should have raised alarms. At the time, it just sounded flattering. After a week of late-night calls and constant messaging, Carrara suggested we meet in person. My first instinct was to stall. Every rule of pandemic caution and online safety screamed against it. But isolation was heavy, and she had a way of making me feel chosen. Like she saw me, not just the surface me, but the parts I usually kept hidden. I agreed, but only under one condition. It had to be public. Downtown, Thursday evening, at a casual restaurant with wide windows and plenty of people. I told myself it was safe. I arrived early, sitting at a booth by the window, nerves buzzing so loud I could barely sip my drink. When she walked in, I exhaled in relief. She looked exactly like her photos: petite, brown hair tucked behind her ears, navy sweater and jeans. She smiled, waved, and walked straight toward me. But instead of sliding into the chair across the table, she slid right beside me. "Hi, Jenna," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Before I could respond, she reached for my hand. I laughed nervously. "Oh, hey, you can sit across if that's more comfortable." But she didn't move, her fingers wrapped tightly around mine. "No, I like being close." At first I told myself it was nerves. People get awkward on first dates. Maybe this was just her way of grounding herself. But as the minutes passed, the pressure of her grip grew stronger. My hand ached. When I tried to pull away lightly, she squeezed harder, her nails pressing into my skin. "Squeeze back," she whispered suddenly. "What?" "Squeeze my hand. Harder. Let's see how much you can take." She smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't match. They were calm. Too calm. I forced a laugh. "You're gonna break my fingers if we keep this up." Her smile slipped away. Her grip tightened until pain shot up my wrist. "Do it. I want to know how much pressure it takes to break bones." I froze. The restaurant around me blurred into background noise, the chatter of strangers, the clinking of silverware. All I could focus on was her hand crushing mine, her voice casual as if she were asking about the weather. I tried to joke again, my voice shaky. "Okay, you're a little intense." Her face changed. The shy girl I'd been talking to all week vanished. She leaned closer, her voice dropping low. "You don't know what you're walking away from." My heart hammered. I yanked my hand free, fumbling for my bag. "I think I need to go." She didn't protest, didn't shout. She just sat there, staring, as if she were memorizing my reaction. I walked straight out of the restaurant, my legs trembling. Outside, the night air felt too sharp, every shadow stretching longer than it should. Behind me, I thought I heard her voice calling my name, but I didn't turn back. When I got home, I locked the door, deleted Zab, and blocked her number. I sat awake until sunrise, the echo of her grip still throbbing in my fingers. In the silence of my apartment, I replayed every moment of our conversations. How quickly she'd mirrored me, how she always seemed to know the right words, how she said she didn't let go once she found someone. It was no accident. She had studied me. The following days blurred into a haze of paranoia. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every time I passed a cafe window, I expected to see her reflection. I couldn't stop replaying the restaurant scene in my head, the way she tested boundaries under the guise of affection, touching, gripping, squeezing harder each time I resisted. It was never about comfort. It was about control. A week later, I opened my email to find a message from Zab. "Someone you matched with has been reported. Please reach out if you had concerns." My stomach dropped. I didn't need to be told who. She had probably done it before. Maybe she'd do it again. But what haunted me wasn't just her. It was me. I had seen the red flags. I had heard her say she never let go. And instead of pulling back, I convinced myself it was sweet. I wanted connection so badly that I ignored the unease twisting in my gut. That realization hurt more than anything. Years later, I'm still single. I tell people it's because I'm busy, because dating apps are shallow, because I value my independence. All of those are true, but the deeper truth is harder to admit. When someone reaches for my hand on a first date, I flinch. The memory comes back uninvited. The nails digging into my skin, the whisper in my ear, the cold stare that replaced the shy smile. Sometimes late at night, I hear her voice again. "You don't know what you're walking away from." And she was right. I don't know. I don't know how far she would have gone if I hadn't pulled away. I don't know what kind of damage she's done to others. And I don't know why I was the one she chose that week. But I do know this. Loneliness is dangerous. It makes you second-guess instincts that are screaming for you to run. It convinces you that attention, even the wrong kind, is better than silence. I've learned that silence is safer. Silence, at least, won't crush your hand until the bones nearly snap. True connection respects boundaries. If someone's affection feels more like control, It isn't love, it's possession. Loneliness should never push us into the arms of someone who doesn't value consent, safety, or respect. Listen to your instincts. They might be the only thing protecting you from harm.